actually make more money away from music than I make off music. You know, I've always been interested in business and always considered myself a business person, but in illegal business.
You know, we were mostly tough guys from the streets that had a hard time. So we didn't know how to really talk to corporate America.
I came here today just to tell the truth. The charges against me are 100% false, and hopefully due to time, we'll start to see that.
You know, hip-hop is not a fair game. You're gonna be in the jungle, you gotta be the fucking lion. You gotta be a king of the jungle.
I'm trying to build something that's strong enough to survive me. With this generation, what we're trying to do is build something that has something.
So once you create something out of necessity, it's the sky's the limit.
You got to be on top of your own business. You know, don't trust no managers, no record company execs, nothing like that. Know it.
Né dans les ghettos des États-Unis, le rap a révélé des artistes mais également de nouveaux entrepreneurs qui ont redéfini le rêve de réussite américain. Parmi eux, 4 artistes ont marqué le genre musical et incarné le succès financier au-delà de la musique depuis 20 ans. Ils peuvent aujourd'hui s'asseoir à la table des milliardaires et des hommes les plus puissants du pays. 4 hommes, 4 destins et une question. Qui de 50 Cent, Dr. Dre, Jay-Z ou Diddy sera le premier milliardaire du rap?
Who's gonna win the race to billionaire?
Oh.
That's a tough one.
Let me think about this one.
L'Américain est dévoré par l'ardente ambition de faire fortune. C'est l'unique passion de sa vie. Chacun ici désire devenir riche et s'élever dans la société. Personne n'estime impossible d'y parvenir. Tocqueville a écrit cela en 1840. 131 ans plus tard, ce rêve américain est toujours vrai. Dans la mythologie américaine, les demi-dieux que l'on vénère sont tous partis de rien. Et si l'obsession du dollar persiste, c'est que chacun ici demeure convaincu qu'il peut faire fortune. La fortune, avoir de l'argent, ne pas savoir quoi en faire. Posséder des milliards et croire que c'est possible parce que cet homme-là a réalisé son destin.
The American dream happened in the 60s, and African Americans in the 60s were barely considered citizens. So, of course, they had nothing to do with the American dream.
Ils sont près de 500 000 Noirs à Harlem, 500 000 personnes qui ne croient plus aux promesses du gouvernement, que la crise a atteint plus que n'importe qui. Pour la plupart, ils sont au chômage depuis 2, 3, 4, 5 ans même. Le pays compte 10 millions de sans-emploi, 10 millions parmi lesquels on trouve un blanc pour 6 noirs.
So in those instances, people in all kinds of facets around their education, around their community centers, and those sorts of things, they were called upon to do things for themselves in ways that maybe traditionally or in other more flush economic times, the state or other kind of funding agencies had taken more of a responsibility. Rather suddenly and rather intensely, those resources were taken away.
Alors lorsque le sort s'en mêle, lorsque cette ville s'arrête de vivre pour une panne de courant, on explose même pour $0,15 pour une pièce de 25 cents.
Harlem n'est pas un cas à part. À l'approche des années 80, entre choc pétrolier et abandon des centres-villes, les écarts entre les pauvres et les riches se creusent. Les ghettos sont sous tension. Et c'est dans ce climat que les futurs stars du rap comme Dr. Dre, Diddy, Jay-Z ou 50 Cent grandissent.
Sometimes out of adversity come amazing things. I think hip-hop came out of, in that regard, this intensification of a national and global neoliberal regime.
C'est sur les cendres des émeutes de 1977 que des DJ du Bronx comme Kool Herc ou Afrika Bambaataa vont faire naître un nouveau mouvement, le hip-hop et sa musique, le rap.
Great cultures are created in times of social upheaval, and hip-hop was created actually out of two social upheavals. The first was the abandonment of the cities in the 1970s, which allowed hip-hop to flourish initially, and then the crack epidemic of the 1980s.
C'est une véritable épidémie qui frappe toutes les grandes villes et gagne la province. la police essaie de réagir, sans succès. Et à New York, sur la 9e avenue, les petits revendeurs continuent sans se gêner d'écouler leur poison.
The mythology of dealing drugs has always been a big part of hip-hop. Even younger rappers glorify drug dealing. But the reality is a lot of the very successful business people who emerged out of hip-hop, they started as street hustlers.
Dans ce creuset de misère sociale règnent les rois de la débrouille. Ceux qui partent de rien mais visent haut et que l'on nomme là-bas les hustlers. Ils n'ont qu'un but, récupérer leur part du rêve américain, peu importe les moyens.
I would not say that hustlers and dealers were the only inspiration for a lot of these artists. I would say growing up in the communities that they grew up in, they were able to see these people in a certain light because they were driving the best cars, you know, they were wearing furs and the best clothes. They were doing things that a person who had a regular job just couldn't do.
Growing up in projects and in systems where, you know, drug selling was becoming a part-time operation to make money, and it was definitely a crazy time, and hip-hop encompassed the good and the evil of that.
And so it became hip to hop in the land known as Planet Rock, where gangs used to fight in the street every day. Now they began to compete in a different way. As the DJ's music made the house shake, the dancers would begin to break. Some electric boogie to move like toys, others would spin and became B-boys.
If you take it back to the essence, the DJ would put speakers out and people would come around. Then they took from the corners, they went to house parties and people would pay to get into the house. That was the beginning of entrepreneurship. So I would be one to say that hip hop was always about entrepreneurship.
We see flyers from 1520 Sedgwick Avenue, Cool Herc's first parties. There was a 25 cents admission for girls and 50 cent admission for boys. They sold drinks and food. The park jams, people were selling things. So right away I would say there's a commercial component.
It's the Bronx in the house. It's everybody in the house. Everybody just throw your hands in the air. A wave around the disco head.
Sorti du ghetto, le rap ne déchaîne pas l'engouement des maisons de disques situées dans les quartiers d'affaires. L'Amérique ignore le hip-hop et ne voit encore dans cette culture qu'un mouvement adolescent, éphémère et peu rentable.
From the beginnings of hip-hop, the artists could not get deals with major record companies. So it took an entrepreneur to put out the records initially just to get people to get excited and get these songs on the radio.
So essentially hip-hop had to create its own institutions. And that's what allowed hip-hop not just to survive, but when the rest of the business finally opened up to hip-hop, it allowed hip-hop tremendous leverage to create deals that were in fact much better than what rock artists or R&B artists were getting.
And when you go from the earlier entrepreneurs like Russell Simmons to the current entrepreneurs like a Jay-Z and a P. Diddy, you realize that this is something that's been part of the fabric of that culture since its inception.
Russell played a key role because he was the impresario. I mean, him and Rick Rubin, when they were in Rick's dorm at NYU, they really created the business of hip-hop.
Jam means record. Def is short for definitive. Definitely the best records you could buy today.
I say every time I see Russell, thank you for the job, because he absolutely is the godfather of the entrepreneurial spirit of hip-hop and actually took hip-hop as a music base to the next level. You know, without Def Jam, you know, there wouldn't be a Jay-Z. Without Russell, there wouldn't be a Puffy. Without Russell, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about Russell. So, you know, he definitely spawned hundreds of babies that have been able to build $1 billion industry.
I'm a tower full of power when it rain in hell. Cause creator scratch the record with a fingernail, rock the bell, and
I think Russell Simmons, outside of everything else that he's done to move the culture forward over the last, 30 years, he was always one to keep pushing it further. So, selling out Madison Square Garden wasn't enough, he went and found that these guys should be in partnership with Adidas. I think that he went and found the Beastie Boys and says, you know what, it's just not for African Americans to rap. We're going to get white guys that rap as well.
Party at the Jimmy Cole making a noise. Rick and Rock, DMC, and the Beastie Boys.
The first huge entrepreneurial deal in hip-hop, or maybe the defining moment where it began, was in the 80s when Run DMC played Madison Square Garden, and they played the song My Adidas. And Russell Simmons, who was managing them at the time, told them to take out their Adidas and hold them up, and ask everyone in the crowd to hold up their Adidas. But then before the show, he invited all these executives from Adidas in Germany to come and watch the show. They didn't have any deal in place when they wrote My Adidas.
Ça, c'est une tennis en or massif, juste à ma mesure, histoire de prendre son pied.
But after that show, they got a $1 million deal pretty quickly.
The downside was when they did the deal with Run DMC, they tried to design sneakers for Run DMC rather than give them the shell-top Adidas that they were selling, and the sneaker that they gave them did not do so well. But more importantly, it was a blueprint that other companies could follow, and they have over the last 20, 25 years.
Après les Beastie Boys ou Run DMC, d'autres stars du rap émergent à la fin des années 80 et au début des années 90, comme Ice-T, NWA, Public Enemy, Nas, A Tribe Called Quest. Si certaines grandes marques refusent toujours de s'associer au rap, d'autres compagnies à la recherche d'une image jeune et branchée commencent à en saisir l'impact.
Here's a little story that must be told about two players rocking on the ice and gold. They try to slow us down from laying the law.
A good example of how corporations' relationship to hip-hop culture evolved over time was how Sprite, a soda brand that's part of the Coca-Cola family, got involved with hip-hop.
Firm come first, obey your thirst. Nas and AZ, all day it hurts. Obey your thirst, kid.
On the advice of a junior marketing executive in Sprite who was a fan of hip-hop, real hip-hop, he basically created a campaign that would tap into hardcore hip-hop artists, Grand Poobah from Brand Nubians, Pete Rock and CL Smooth, A Tribe Called Quest, to just meet them in the recording studio and see them doing what they're doing, and not even mentioning Sprite necessarily, just representing the brand as something that was very cool and very fresh and very cutting edge. Sprite basically doubled its volume in 2 years and became the fastest growing soft drink brand in America.
By putting some of these artists on national television, I think it gave a lot of these guys who were making music a very higher profile.
4 hommes vont parvenir à profiter au mieux de la nouvelle exposition du hip-hop. Les New-Yorkais Diddy, Jay-Z et 50 Cent, ainsi que le Californien Dr. Dre, vont s'affirmer dans les années 90 et 2000 comme les rois du rap dans les ventes d'albums. Des réussites qui marquent le début d'une véritable course aux millions.
I would say that Jay-Z, Diddy, Dr. Dre, and 50 Cent all grew up in a tough environment. I think a lot of what they talk about in their music shows a struggle in their upbringing.
Well, we hear Dr. Dre grew up in Compton, so Compton wasn't that great. I'm sure when he was growing up, you know, 50 grew up in Southside Jamaica, Queens, and nowhere to play with. Jay-Z, Brooklyn.
Keep it real now. Brooklyn love. That's how we keep it live, baby, all right?
You know, so these guys grew up in environments that weren't suitable to your homegrown American dream situation.
Throughout the 90s, you know, there were a lot of really big deals, but I think it really picked up in the mid-90s with Diddy and the whole Bad Boy family and Sean John, the clothing line, and all the different endorsements that Diddy did. You know, I think that's when it really started to explode.
Sean Combs, Sean John Combs. Some of you may even know me as Puffy, Puff Daddy, or P. Diddy.
Fils d'un gangster de Harlem, assassiné lorsqu'il était enfant, Diddy a commencé à amasser les dollars avec son label Bad Boy, sur lequel il a notamment signé la superstar du rap, Notorious Big.
Diddy may have been a little different. He may have had a better upbringing. Though he grew up in Mount Vernon, there was that Harlem factor. You know, I think that there were different aspects of the street that he lived in, that he talked to, with his father being killed at such a young age. Again, he had to grow up really fast. He didn't have that father figure in his life.
Before he became a record executive, he was always selling the complete lifestyle of hip-hop, from parties to then the music and then to the clothes. And any brand endorsement was legitimate so long as it represented the lifestyle of making money.
I looked at the rise of Puff and Jay and Dre, everyone, as a fan first and as a colleague second, and I think it's important that, they've been able to trailblaze for hip-hop and constantly move the brands forward, and we're all competitive, we all compete against each other, but we also walk hand in hand because we don't want to do things that'll damage the brand or damage this thing called hip-hop that's allowed us to feed our family.
À la fin des années 90, poussé par les clips et l'impact médiatique de ses plus grandes stars, le hip-hop explose. Les albums de rap se vendent par millions et véhiculent un véritable style de vie. Le marché hip-hop global pensé par Russell Simmons devient une réalité. Et les Jay-Z, Diddy, Dr. Dre et un peu plus tard 50 Cent en visent le sommet.
Everywhere you'd go around the world and you start seeing kids wearing the baggy pants or the hoodies or dressing like the music videos. And that's when you started to realize it's much bigger than just music. It's changing the vernacular, the ebonics, the way they talk, bling or rims or whatever it is, but also in the clothing and the style and the designers that they were choosing.
Mid-90s, I think, was a time where hip-hop, not just the music, but just the branding started to really flourish, and you had a lot of clothing lines coming out. People were noticing that they can get in a video, wear, some sort of clothing, and all of a sudden, everyone's doing it.
Well, one of the first clothing lines to spread around the world from hip-hop was Wu Wear.
What Wu-Tang was able to do with Wu Wear was actually create a clothing line that existed independent of their careers as recording artists.
The clothing that was being sold at this time by Tommy Hilfiger and by Ralph Lauren were now becoming too small, too tight, and wasn't fitting how black guys dressed in my neighborhood. And so I decided to make clothing that would fit more of my style.
Wu Wear, what's going on? They're the best of this year. Wu Wear and fleece wear.
So I took things that I saw was a defect in other products, and I improved on those products for my clothing line. And eventually, we wound up spawning 5 stores around the country. We was the first clothing line from hip-hop to ever enter the window on 34th Street in Macy's. That was a great proud moment for me, to walk through New York City to Macy's and to see my clothing line in the window on 34th Street. It was a real great accomplishment for us.
And that opened the floodgates to other hip-hop clothing brands like FUBU, like Mecca, like Fat Farm, and eventually Sean John and Rocawear, who are still in Macy's to this day.
Is the people who started Rocawear was actually the people that was working with Wu Wear.
Avant de lancer sa marque de vêtements, Sean Carter, dit Jay-Z, s'est écarté du business illicite pour se lancer dans le rap au milieu des années 90 en créant le label Rocafella avec ses amis de Brooklyn Damon Dash et Karim Burke. Dès ses débuts, le trio a imposé sa vision et ses conditions au monde des affaires.
With Jay-Z, you had him, talking about growing up in Marcy projects and all of the things that he did, the drug selling, just being in the hood, all of that stuff came across in his first album, Reasonable Doubt, which really introduced him to the hip-hop community.
He realized pretty soon that there was a limited commercial ceiling on that. And you see he starts to shift over his music and the way he dresses and acts kind of into like more of a corporate ethos and, you know, this idea of I'm a businessman.
You know, me and Jay talk all the time. Actually, I met with him before I got on the plane to come out here. He was one of the last people I sat down and talked to. I mean, you know, I commend Jay because, you know, he's always going to figure it out, and he's always on to the next big thing, man. And, you know, and somebody that got that type of vision, you know, he's like an OG, you know, in the right. You know, he's been around, you know, music for a long time, and he's seemed to pave his own way and, you know, made his own lane. And I think, you know, that's special, man, you know.
Damon Dash tells the story very early on, as Jay-Z begins to have some success, of approaching a jeans company called Iceberg Jeans for an endorsement deal, much like the Run DMC Adidas endorsement deal. Iceberg Jeans said, we're really not interested in doing business with somebody like Jay-Z. And Damon Dash, being who he is, turned around and said, okay, all right, fine. Then I'm going to go start my own clothing company. I'm going to put you guys out of business. The great example of the difference between doing an entertainment business and doing a clothing business is manifest when you look at the final sales prices for these two companies. When Jay-Z and Dame sold Rockefeller Records, they sold it for $20 million. When they sold Rockaware, they sold it for $200 million. Huge difference.
By the early 2000s, advertisers had begun to finally realize that hip-hop was here to stay.
Taking off, G4's about the land. See how we cross brand, we boss about it, man. Got the soul of the old Gucci's. If you upset, sue me. If not, sit back and watch me do me.
Very early on, I realized that Jay-Z was doing a lot. He used to wear Nike sneakers all the time. And he would talk about it in his music, and then you'd walk outside and you'd see a bunch of kids wearing those sneakers. So I figured Nike weren't giving him a piece of the profit, so why wouldn't we do a separate deal in which he had his own line with a company that will? And that's what led to the partnership with Jay-Z and Reebok. And after Jay-Z and Reebok became successful, there was another rapper coming up who was talking about G-Unit. And I felt like this would be very important to make 50 Cent sneaker using G-Unit, again, with Reebok.
I met some gentleman that was part of Reebok, and they said, do you think 50 Cent would be interested? And I said, yeah, I think they would be. We went back and spoke about if we could do a G-Unit brand. They wanted to do a 50 Cent sneaker. We said, no, it's important that we build the brand that 50 can help push and not just be about 50. And, you know, we sold 7 million pairs of sneakers during our venture at Reebok. So I feel like it did well. You know, 50 made $25+ million. Everybody's happy.
For corporate America to see the influence that these guys had, they bought into that. I don't know if, like, all of the executives at a particular company were like, hey, everyone listen to this album and make sure it's properly representing our brand. I don't think so. I think it was like, how many records does this sell? How much money is this making? And how can we get a piece of that?
The extension of the music into fashion and then film and then really into art is just a testament to the fact that the culture went mainstream and that people wanted to pay for this lifestyle.
Au tournant des années 2000, le rayonnement du hip-hop et de ses plus grandes figures touche les 15-25 ans de toutes classes et de toutes origines. Didi et 50 Cent décrochent leur propre programme de télé-réalité. La musique pop, les jeux vidéo et le cinéma adoptent le rap. Le hip-hop devient une composante majeure de la culture américaine, de Brooklyn à Hollywood.
I did a movie called Ghost Dog. I did a movie called Kill Bill. And when I did Kill Bill, I met a guy named Quentin Tarantino, who became my mentor. But I also met an executive named Harvey Weinstein. And when Harvey Weinstein was doing one of his movies called Derailed, he needed somebody to play a role. And he called my house personally and he said, RZA, I want you to do my movie. You have a new career now. And I can't say no to Harvey. I have so much respect for him. I did his movie, and he was right. It spawned a new career for me.
Hip hop now, if you turn on the radio, any commercial probably is in 2 out of every 3 commercials, some kind of inspiration, whether it's the beat, the dancing, the look, the sound. It also shows how pop culture has been affected by the power of hip hop.
Devenu une culture de masse, le hip-hop génère des millions de dollars. Ni les artistes, ni les plus grandes firmes ne veulent rater la moindre opportunité de gagner de l'argent. La ruée vers l'or du hip-hop provoque des excès en tout genre. Et les échecs sont bien plus nombreux que les réussites.
Hip-hop is such a part of mainstream culture that you just have advertisers falling all over themselves to get a hold of any rapper. And you see, you know, a lot of strange associations like Drake and Kodak. Crazy. Pitbull and Dr. Pepper.
You know, some bad deals that are done happen because there was something about the artist and the brand that did not connect. You know, like it felt like the artist was only taking money to wear the brand or say, hi, I'm the brand. But if you had a real relationship between the artist and the brand, it worked very well.
Les mauvais deals ne sont pas les seuls dangers du business hip-hop. Au cours de leur ascension, Diddy et Jay-Z ont réalisé que lorsqu'on incarne la culture du ghetto, on n'est jamais à l'abri de la violence. En 1999, lors d'une soirée, Jay-Z est accusé d'avoir agressé à l'arme blanche le manager Lance Rivera. De son côté, Diddy, alors accompagné de Jennifer Lopez, se retrouve impliqué dans une fusillade dans un club. Rattrapés par la rue, ils ont failli tout perdre du jour au lendemain.
The final confrontation between the street element and the corporate future of hip-hop came embodied by the legal struggles of Diddy and Jay-Z near the dawn of the 21st century. Diddy was in the middle of an altercation at a nightclub in New York and ended up accused of a felony and could have spent years and years in prison, basically ending his career and all the businesses that depended on him, including his clothing business.
How you doing? I'm just gonna make a statement because I can't answer no question. I'm just gonna make a statement, all right? I came here today just to tell the truth, so hopefully we can get down to the bottom of this. I'm 100%, the charges against me are 100% false, and hopefully due to time, we'll start to see that.
You know, streets is like the jungle, man. They eat your ass alive if you let them. And, you know, you out there, you gotta just play, you gotta play ball. If you're gonna be in the jungle, you gotta be the fucking lion. You gotta be a king of the jungle. You know what I'm saying?
Jay-Z is on trial today, man, and he made some time to holler at us. He knows everybody out there is real concerned about him.
Jay-Z, who just started Rockaware, was also in a nightclub altercation, you know, that similarly could have really ended or slowed his career.
What's up, Jay? No, man, we with you though, dog. You alright, man?
Yeah, today's a big day.
You know everybody up here is with you and we support you. We got crazy love for you. You know that, right?
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
You like Jay-Z?
And of course, there's a question here. Is it really guilty before proved innocent?
Both were found not guilty. And that's helped, I'm sure, their business. But it also helps when you have, you know, a lot of money and a great legal team.
These two guys were able to extricate themselves from these legal troubles and didn't face the consequences ultimately. But I think also in doing that really made the choice to become businessmen.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning it was about like $1 makes two. You know, it's about a hustle and $1 makes two. Now I'm trying to build something that's strong enough to survive me. Like I can have my kids, you know, have a company or something to look forward to, something I can hand down in family. Like, you know, from where I'm from, I don't know anybody that had a business handed down to them. It was just not like that. So with this generation, what we're trying to do is build something that has something to pass down to, you know, our kids.
You ready, B?
Tout juste sorti de ses ennuis avec la justice, Jay-Z s'assagit. En 2002, son rapprochement avec la chanteuse Beyoncé lui offre une nouvelle image et une stature internationale. En 2008, les deux superstars se marient. Le couple devient le plus glamour et le plus puissant du showbiz américain.
Jay-Z meeting Beyonce, but this thing being secret and their whole relationship being kept from the public was a great marketing ploy. I think that it helped Jay to position himself as, quote unquote, the main man. He was the main man because he had the authenticity of New York, he was Brooklyn, Marcy, but at the same time, he was with the princess. Beyonce was becoming the princess of American pop music.
Jay-Z knew exactly what he was doing with the Beyonce marriage. I mean, I'm sure they're madly in love, but I'm saying, when he hooked up with her, that might have been his best business move yet. She was in a whole other audience, you know. She was super mainstream, you know. She was international. Not to say that Jay-Z wasn't, but in the way that Beyonce was, I don't know about that. She was People magazine, you know. Jay-Z really wasn't People magazine, but he is now.
You know, and if you kind of look at some of the advertisements that he's landed and companies he's been involved with since they've gotten together, and just since they've been dating, not even since they've been married, but, you know, I mean, Jay-Z did a deal with HP, and, you know, he's done deals with Budweiser, and he recently invested in a women's and little girls' hair care and skin care line. You know, these are things that probably wouldn't have happened if you weren't involved with Beyonce.
All I need in this life is sin. It's me and my girlfriend.
La course aux millions entre Diddy, Jay-Z, Dr. Dre et 50 Cent n'a jamais été aussi intense qu'à la fin des années 2000. Alors que le marché du disque s'effondre, les fortunes de nos 4 artistes rap augmentent de façon spectaculaire grâce à des investissements dans des secteurs bien loin du hip-hop, mais bien plus lucratifs.
I think that artists like Jay-Z and Diddy started to see their worth outside of the entertainment business very quickly. And how do you see it? Because you make so much more money doing clothing. You make so much more money doing headphones. You make so much more money doing vodka or any other kind of consumer product.
I actually make more money away from music than I make off of music. But that comes from my personal interest in business. You know, prior to the success of Get Rich or Die Trying, I didn't generate enough interest to be a part of business deals, and I didn't have finances to buy myself into the actual deal. You know, I've always been interested in business and always considered myself a business person, but in illegal business.
Venu du Queens et connu sous le nom de 50 Cent, Curtis Jackson a appliqué le slogan « Réussir ou mourir » à son propre trafic de drogue avant de l'adapter avec succès à sa carrière d'artiste rap et d'acteur.
When you look at someone like a 50 Cent, he is somebody who came from a very, very poor background, drug-addicted mother who had been shot at, and his music was so authentic that people immediately just gravitated towards it.
I used to be a music executive at Sony, and I signed 50 Cent when I was at Sony before he got shot. And amazingly, his voice changed. The way he delivered the lyrics changed because a bullet went in his mouth. And when that happened, it gave him a much more unique voice. And when he made records with that unique sound, it became what it is today. You know, he became a global phenomenon.
All of a sudden, 50 Cent comes out with this very violent album, but extremely good in terms of the production and the songwriting. You can't take that away. That really propelled the album because there was this image, this I'm the bad guy image, followed by this really great music.
And in many ways, you could say that was a reaction to Diddy and Jay-Z becoming, you know, more corporate. But of course, 50 Cent was just as corporate as they were, and he knew where to stop.
I think he really represents the rags to riches and complete business of hip-hop in that sense.
You know, we created a culture out of necessity. So once you create something out of necessity, it's the sky's the limit.
I think there was always a plan for them to venture into other businesses. But when they saw the decline in music, and I think they saw it before everybody else, they knew they had to kind of spread themselves out.
The music is the forefront, and I think that the business comes with that. The more music that you have and the better your music is, the easier it is for you to do business deals, and the more companies want to invest in your brand, because they want people to, you know, buy their brand, so they feel like if people like you and like what you're doing, and if you stand beside their brand, then hey, they'll cut you a check for it. Or you can go out and make your own shit, and, you know, blow your own brand up, but it all equals money.
I wouldn't be able to do all of these other things without music. I still, you know what I did? I said, Kanye West gets the trophies and 50 Cent gets the checks.
Preuve de son adaptation au monde des affaires, 50 Cent va réaliser un gros coup en prêtant son image et en prenant des parts dans une jeune société d'eau minérale en plein essor.
Hi, I'm Curtis Jackson. I used to have to grind to get my vitamins till I made my own flavor vitamin water. Now I'm stanky rich. You know, I smell like the vault, man.
This deal happened through an interesting process. It was get rich or die trying. 10 million albums sold, 50 was in the office, and it was like, we shouldn't do a liquor. It was like, we can't do a liquor, we gotta actually cut across the grain of your bad guy personality. And 50 said, you know what would be interesting is if we could sell water. And I was like, water, wow.
I mean, I'm so paid, man.
They were an upstart at that point. They didn't have the money to pay us as an endorser, so we created the equity play, and 50 became a partner in the business, and the rest is history.
Now, they weren't the majority stakeholder in the company, but they were a significant stakeholder in the company, and that meant that a few years later, when Vitamin Water sold to Coca-Cola for $4.1 billion, that 50 Cent, and by extension Chris Slighty, had a huge multi-million-dollar windfall from that sale.
He had the single best year of any single hip-hop artist of the 5 years that we've been doing these hip-hop Cash Kings list. He pulled in $150 million in 2008, I think it was, and I think double the next best year that anybody has had during that entire span.
Peu à peu, les stars du rap investissent dans des marques prestigieuses en accord avec le statut qu'ils souhaitent se donner. En 2003, Jay-Z a ouvert le 4040, un bar haut de gamme au cœur de New York. Luxe, parfum, vodka, champagne, à chaque fois ou presque, ça marche.
With champagne in particular, there's a very interesting relationship with hip-hop. Early rappers, Biggie particularly, rapped a lot about Cristal, Dom Perignon, and other rappers started to hear that and think of that as a symbol of success.
Today, when you look at liquor brands and you see how everyone is trying to get a liquor brand or get some sort of deal with a liquor company because they know that, you know, the community is very tapped into that. So they're out there and they know that there's money there.
I just want to thank you all for allowing me to be in your I know this seems threatening, sorry.
Hold on, speak.
To
the brothers and the sisters.
It was in the late 2000s. Diageo had this brand, Ciroc. It was not doing well. It was maybe the number 50 vodka in the world, and they needed a spokesperson. So they started talking with Diddy. They worked out a deal where he would get half of all profits. And at the time, that was a great deal for them because it wasn't particularly profitable. I think they had no idea just how hard Diddy would go in terms of promoting it. You know, and within a matter of only a couple years, you know, we've seen Ciroc go from the number 50 vodka in the world to, I think it's the number 2 vodka.
It just goes to show you the influence that someone like a Diddy can have. He's a great example because he kind of puts his hands in everything. He's like, whatever I use, I'm going to get a check off of it.
You are what you say you are. I am king.
Like, really, what's a hip-hop cologne? Like, there's no hip-hop cologne, but all of a sudden, like, now people have their own fragrance line.
Power. It can come from anywhere. From the streets, from your dreams, from your confidence and inner drive. Don't be afraid to reach out and take it.
I created a company, you know, and I partnered within a company that's called Lighthouse Beauty to create my own fragrance.
Power. Make it your own.
Pendant que ses collègues et rivaux investissent le marché du luxe, Dr. Dre encaisse ses chèques de producteur pour 50 Cent ou Eminem, tout en développant dans l'ombre une marque de casque audio. Ses premiers modèles sortent en 2009 et marquent le début de l'offensive des businessmen du rap sur le monde du high-tech.
Dre hadn't diversified. He was a real consummate artist and producer. He was a studio rat. He stayed in the studio.
Amoureux de la musique, Dr. Dre a d'abord mis son talent au service des autres en façonnant le son du gangster rap de Los Angeles avant de rouler pour lui et de signer des artistes comme Snoop Dogg ou Eminem.
Dr. Dre was never really a gangster. I mean, he came from Compton, and I'm sure he knew what to do with his fists, but he was never a gangbanger. What Dr. Dre was a musician and a producer. That's his real identity.
He started in the world-class wrecking crew. When NWA came out is when people really started to identify with Dr. Dre, and you know what NWA was about.
Dr. Dre, very early on, wasn't much of an entrepreneur at all. He signed to Eazy-E's label. Eazy-E was the entrepreneur, and then when he left that deal, which was supposedly bad for him, he went into another kind of bad partnership with Suge Knight, one that allowed him to make more money, but ultimately he had to relinquish everything he had made in that partnership just to get out of the partnership with Suge Knight. Then he started to create something more lasting with Jimmy Iovine as his direct partner with Aftermath. And Aftermath did not do so well until he signed Eminem. And then Eminem signed 50 Cent. And so then Aftermath became a bit of a music business empire.
I got into it just wanting to make music. You know what I'm saying? I didn't really give a damn about the business part of it. I was trusting people, trusting that they would handle my business the way it was supposed to be handled. And you get fucked like that. So, you know, you got to be on top of your own business. You know, don't trust no managers, no record company execs, nothing like that. Know it, you know. 9 times out of 10, somebody getting into hip-hop music is not concerned with the business because they want to make the music, they want to do the videos and shit, but you have to because later on you'll wish you did.
It wasn't until Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre partnered on the Beats headphones, Beats by Dr. Dre headphones, that he actually did begin to sell consumer products with his name, and boy, did it sell.
Last summer, HTC bought half the company for $300 million, so pretty good for for a company that's only a few years old.
Pour Dr. Dre et Jimmy Iovine, le succès est total. En 2011, leur marque représentait 53% du marché des casques audio et le duo a multiplié les licences. Le fabricant de téléphones HTC s'est même offert 51% des parts de la société pour $300 millions. De quoi faire naître des vocations.
When it comes to headphones, I will say that the Beats headphones were the first ones to go mass and to open up the way for hip-hop artists to join this revolution. I think it's more fun to compete now, because musically I never wanted to compete with East Coast, West Coast. I thought that the hip-hop generation was one, but now that we are in this high-tech thing, I think it's fun to compete. I think it's fun. It's like how Apple competes with Droid, and each time, one company has to add a new technology to defeat the other. This is real exciting for me, real challenging for me, and I'm going to have fun in this arena.
And we reached a point where you could even sell computers with the hip-hop identity, because Jay-Z became the face of HP because he really represented a certain type of success and a certain type of brand DNA that HP, Hewlett-Packard, wanted to be associated with.
I said it, we are. This is Rock Nation. Pledge your allegiance. Get your boutiques on. All black everything. Black cars, all black everything. And our girls are blackbirds, riding with they diligence. I get more in depth if you boys really real enough. This is not familiar. I'll explain later. But for now, let me get back to this paper. I'm a couple bands down and I'm trying to get back. I gave Doug a grip, I lost a flip for 5 stacks. Yeah, I'm talking 5
Les stars du rap ont peu à peu intégré les règles et les codes des grandes corporations. Ils ne voient plus aucune limite à l'expansion de leurs entreprises. En 2008, Jay-Z a quitté Rockefeller et Def Jam pour créer un label et une compagnie de management, Roc Nation, grâce à une offre de 150 millions de dollars du géant du spectacle, Live Nation.
If you look at the evolution of the dress code of someone like a Jay-Z, I think it really speaks volumes about the fact that hip-hop moved away from certain stereotypes.
Well, I'm changing as a person. I have new interests based on a new lifestyle. I'm going different places and acting in different circles. Like when you see me, my entire career, the last 6 years, you see me in clothes that have been athletic inspired. And then now if you look, if you Google 50 Cent photographs, you'll see more clothing that is representation of business. You'll see photographs of me in suits from different places that I've actually had to attend because I have more meetings and engagements where that's appropriate.
From Jay-Z's perspective, when you've gone out and you've done business in the street where, you know, something goes wrong, you could end up dead. When you go from that to going to the boardroom with a bunch of guys in suits, you know, it's like, come on, are you kidding me? I mean, you can't scare me.
We're not college graduates. We're not, you know, we're mostly tough guys from the streets that had a hard time. And so we didn't know how to really talk to corporate America at the time. But nowadays, as I've grown and I've traveled the world and I've met many corporate people and I've sat down with billionaires and they explain to me the power of their money. And it's because of cooperation of many men.
P. Diddy just has his own cable network. Yeah, that's a big deal to have your own cable. Now he has his own television network and he can program it 24 hours a day. That's more power.
Special announcement, the revolution will be televised. The revolution will be televised. Today is a very, very big day. I'm here to announce my new cable network, Revolt.
And of course, when you own media properties, that brings financial capital and Wall Street awareness and all those, you know, capitalization of markets that comes with it. So yes, it's tomorrow morning. I feel like the leaders and the entrepreneurs who came out of hip-hop will be now facing off and competing and dealing with the biggest deals in the world.
I think what makes hip-hop palatable to corporate America is that it makes money. And also that the people that they're dealing with are smart, right? That's something to respect because power really only respects power.
Politics plays a role in hip-hop. And not only do we want to vote you in, we want to hold you accountable, and we want to be part, we want to have a seat at the table. You can't have a seat at the table if you don't have power and influence.
When Russell Simmons picks up the phone and calls the governor of New York and says, I want to hold a meeting to try and change, the 3 strikes rule or, the Rockefeller laws and that sort of thing, somebody takes that call and he does get that meeting. That wouldn't happen, I don't think, without his wealth, right? But the interesting thing is he provides, I think, a compelling model. So other artists and individuals, Jay-Z has been able to do this. Any number of individuals are stepping up into that situation, realizing that they aren't just artists and they aren't just hip-hop guys, but in fact they're citizens.
Avec des fortunes personnelles dépassant les 100 millions de dollars, Dr. Dre, 50 Cent, Diddy ou Jay-Z veulent prouver l'étendue de leur influence jusqu'à aider à faire élire leur champion à la Maison Blanche.
I mean, they tell us we helping. I didn't get a check for it. I'll tell you that now. I felt like, we all pitched in and did what we could as far as our influence. This song that I wrote, My President's Black, I felt was, big as far as culture, but, you might have some people that beg to differ. But, I felt like I was doing, my part to help out. I actually went and voted, you know what I mean?
Myself, Jay, Puffy, Mary, Beyonce, Russell, we said that we're going to form this spawned the Super Friends, and we're going to elect the first African-American president. We had a great relationship with the administration. We actually campaigned in some of the red states, and because of our influence, you know, we would have 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 people show up places not to hear us perform, but to hear us talk about how electing a new president in Barack Obama would help change the world.
I'll tell you, I'm voting for Barack Obama.
If you look at how active Jay-Z was, Diddy was, you'd never seen them this politically active before the Obama election. And I feel like it was a great thing because it showed the power that the hip-hop community had.
Do you like hip-hop?
Of course.
Who do you like?
You know, I got to admit, lately I've been listening to a lot of Jay-Z. I mean, this new American Gangster album is tight.
Like about it?
Yeah, you know, it tells a story, and you know, he's, as Jay would say, he's got flow.
I think the music and culture of hip hop, and that's just one factor, but I think that it showed the world, you know, the power of youth.
Because there was a generation that grew up open-minded to that culture, they were also open-minded for a black president.
I think there's a bit of disconnect, actually, between politics and hip-hop. I think in some ways, the hip-hop of 1988, Public Enemy, Boogie Down Productions, KRS-One, Rakim, that music, De La Soul, Jungle Brothers, that helped to really create the politics of '08. But I think today's hip-hop artists are very disconnected from politics and disconnected in some ways from some of the urgent things happening in the streets as well.
Même s'il a aidé à installer au cœur de Brooklyn le club de basket des Nets dont il est actionnaire, pour certains des habitants du quartier, Jay-Z semble aujourd'hui bien éloigné des réalités de la rue.
In the hip-hop community, you're constantly hearing shout-outs from rappers and hip-hop and all that sort of things about Brooklyn. And the missing part is that neither do I ever see them, nor do I know them, nor have they been here, nor has any kind of real, it's almost like they live in a magical world. They're like virtual characters that you don't see walking on the street, you don't see in a restaurant, but they are singing and boasting proudly about Brooklyn, but I wonder how they know about it if I haven't seen them.
Breaking news, every city across America is feeling the effects of the recession. The American people are looking for a sign of change. From city to city, black and silver American flags are popping up as a symbol of that change. Record high gas prices.
I try to do as much as I can for my community, but you know, once it's all said and done, like, you can't please everybody. And in this situation, when you have fame and a name, you kind of become the target. Like, it's easier for, you know, people to point fingers and say what you haven't done when you've done everything in the book that you're supposed to do. In the words of one of my favorite rappers, Juvenile, he said, you can't please everybody, but I love my folks. And if I give you everything, then I'm gonna be broke. You know what I mean? Quote that.
Guys, this is crazy. I grew up without money, but I didn't grow up hungry. What's going on in this world is out of control. I mean, there's so many people suffering from hunger. I mean, dying from hunger every day. I went to Africa, and the devastation I witnessed changed me forever.
Now he has a street king movement that he's trying to feed 1 billion children, or actually provide 1 billion meals.
It's crazy.
And that comes from growth, and the growth of hip-hop and the growth of 50 Cent, and you know, it all started from that hood mentality and that get rich or die trying.
With money comes power, and with power comes influence. So they've become much more influential, and they've used their power and influence to get more people out voting, get more people becoming and betting on themselves to become entrepreneurs, getting people, Jay-Z helping people and less unfortunate people have access to water, or helping kids with education. Many different things using their power to help spread goodness throughout the world.
Jay-Z, Diddy, 50 Cent et Dr. Dre sont aujourd'hui de véritables pop stars internationales et des PDG multimillionnaires. Mais sont-ils des exceptions ou ont-ils créé un véritable modèle d'entrepreneur hip-hop?
This generation of super empowered artists, moguls, Diddy, Jay-Z, 50 Cent, they are kind of special because they came up in a time where, again, nobody was checking for them, and they ended up with the world at their feet. And they created a world for artists like Kanye and Nicki Minaj and Drake and Lil Wayne to be accepted as pop artists. But the problem with that is that once you are accepted by major institutions right off the bat, you don't have to create your own. So I worry sometimes that this new generation of hip-hop really doesn't have the impetus to create new things.
I want $200 million. Shit, are you serious? Damn right. We looked at our hustlers in our neighborhood. Like, we looked at our hustlers and we was like, wow, if we could be like them, and I surpassed those guys, and they look up to me now, we're going to be the new Puffies and the Jay-Z's and the Birdmans of this era. It's our time to shine, baby.
Avec des fortunes personnelles de 550 millions de dollars pour Diddy, 460 millions pour Jay-Z, 270 pour Dr. Dre et 110 pour 50 Cent, tous sont encore en course pour devenir le premier milliardaire du rap, à moins qu'un challenger comme Birdman ne vienne semer le trouble dans le Big Four du rap business.
Who's gonna win the race to billionaire?
Oh. That's a tough one.
Let me think about this one.
If I had to put my money on anybody, I'd definitely, well, I think it's going to be a race between Jay-Z and Diddy. I think Diddy really wants it more than anyone else, but Jay-Z's more likely to get it.
I think it's between Diddy and Jay-Z just because of the hustler spirit that they have. They're always like neck and neck on that little Forbes list. I don't know, I'm gonna go with Diddy. You thought I was gonna say Jay-Z.
I know Puff is on his way. Jay and Puff right there together. Shit, hopefully I can be the, you know what I mean? Shit, if I figure it out, but they right there together. I'll tell you what, if they stand in the same room, I think they got $1 billion together.
I would actually put my money on Diddy. Given the structure of his deal with Ciroc, I think he's got the best chance of becoming a billionaire. If the parent company Diageo ever sells the Ciroc brand, you know, he stands to make hundreds of millions of dollars.
If I were going to put my money on something, I would probably put it on Dr. Dre. I think he's probably the most astute businessman that came out of hip-hop, and he does it in a very quiet, unassuming way, but the fortune just keeps growing.
It's definitely a race between Puffy, Jay, 50, and Dr. Dre. It's just, will Dre or Puffy sell Ciroc or Beats by Dre before Jay and 50 figure out how to get $1 billion before them?
I'm proud of what these people have accomplished, and these are friends, and I want to celebrate them while they're here. I'm proud that they gave us consciousness to be businessmen.
You know, it's funny. It's like when you think of hip-hop, right, you say who's going to be the first hip-hop billionaire. You don't say who's going to be the first tech billionaire. You don't say who's going to be the first dance music billionaire. You don't say who's going to be anything, but as it relates to hip-hop, the financial success is attached to it. That's what entrepreneurship is all about, right? Hip-hop music allowed a next generation to partake in what the American dream looked like. I'm young, make money, I have an opportunity to do something special, and there's guys who came from it that said, this is what the American dream looks like.
L'esprit du hustler a permis à Diddy, 50 Cent, Jay-Z et Dr. Dre d'amasser d'immenses fortunes. Mais il porte en lui les traces de leurs origines modestes et de leur passé sulfureux. À l'heure où nos 4 artistes entrepreneurs veulent rivaliser avec les gros bras de Wall Street, on peut se demander si les grandes institutions du pays et les plus grosses corporations les laisseront vraiment incarner leur précieux rêve américain.